On the night of February 24th, 1978, 5 young men from Yuba City, California, drove into a basketball stadium to watch their favorite team play. They were the Gateway Gators, a tight-knit group of friends with mild intellectual disabilities or psychiatric conditions. They had a big game of their own the next day. They had their uniforms laid out. They had every reason to come home. Instead, they drove 70 miles in the opposite direction, straight into a blizzard and up a treacherous mountain road in a 1969 Mercury Montego. When the car was found, it wasn't stuck. It wasn't out of gas. The keys were gone, the doors were unlocked, and the 5 men were nowhere to be found. What followed was a discovery so grim and mathematically impossible that it defies every law of human survival. To understand the mystery, you have to understand the men. Bill Sterling, 29, Jack Madruga, 30, Ted Weiher, 32, Jack Hoot, 24, and Gary Mathias, 25. They were inseparable. Gary Mathias was the only one with a military background and a diagnosis of schizophrenia, but he was stable and medicated. After the game in Chico, they stopped at a local market for snacks, Snickers, Pepsi, and milk. This was the last time they were seen alive. The logical route home was south. Instead, Madruga's Mercury Montego was found days later heading northeast, parked on a remote logging road 4,400 feet up in the Plumas National Forest. The snow was deep, but the car wasn't trapped. 5 healthy men could have easily pushed it. Why did they stop? Why did they get out into the freezing dark without coats, wearing only light jackets and sneakers? As the search began, a witness emerged. Joseph Schons, who was suffering a heart attack in his own car nearby that same night, claimed he saw 2 sets of headlights, Mercury, and another vehicle. He saw figures moving. He screamed for help. The lights went out. The figures stopped moving. 4 months later, when the snow finally melted, a group of motorcyclists stumbled upon a Forest Service trailer 19 miles away from the abandoned car. Inside the trailer, they found Ted Watt. He was stretched out on a bed, tucked under 8 blankets. He had been alive in that trailer for nearly 3 months. He had lost 100 pounds. His feet were black with gangrene. Next to him were enough rations and canned food to feed all 5 men for a year. Here is the illogical part. Ted Weiher starved to death in a room filled with food. None of the cans had been opened, though a P38 can opener was sitting on the counter. He had never started a fire, even though there were matches and wood-burning materials everywhere. If Ted was in the trailer, where were the others? The search radius expanded. The remains of Madruga and Sterling were found nearly 11 miles from the car, on opposite sides of the road. They had succumbed to the elements early on. Jack Hoot's remains were found by his own father only. His backbone and a pair of levies remained. But Gary Mathias, the man who knew how to survive, he was never found. Only his sneakers were discovered inside the trailer, suggesting he had been there with Ted. Investigators were left with a haunting set of questions. 1. The fear. What were they running from? To walk 19 miles through waist-deep snow in sneakers requires a level of terror that overrides the instinct to stay with a warm car. 2. The stasis. Why did they let Ted starve? If Mathias and Hoot were there, why didn't they open the food? 3. The missing key. Did someone else drive them up there? Some believe Gary Mathias had a schizophrenic break and led his friends into the woods, and out of loyalty, others believe they were chased off the road by a second car mentioned by Joseph Schons, a group of locals who might have harassed the men until they fled in panic. But the most haunting theory is simply the fog of the mountain. Panic, hypothermia, and intellectual vulnerability combined into a lethal cocktail. Today, the Plumas National Forest remains silent. The families have passed away without answers. The Yuba County 5 remains one of the most disturbing anomalies in the history of the American West story of 5 friends who went to a basketball game and ended up in a nightmare they could unthink their way out of. They were 19 miles from safety, surrounded by food, and yet they vanished into the thin, cold air. Sometimes The greatest predator isn't a person. It's the illogical choices we make when the lights go out.